So we'll look at the IKSpline setup, which is quite a useful technique to know if you need ever to set up things like snakes or tentacles, but it's also useful for a decent spine setup as well. I've got this file open which literally saves us setting up the joint. I'll just go into wireframe mode, where you can see we've got a joint chain, and all I've done with these boxes is parent each box to the joint, just so that we can see what happens visually with the joint. So the boxes are just a useful way to show the twists, which you wouldn't necessarily see that well with just the joints themselves. So the boxes are just there for a visual purpose. Okay, each box is parented to each joint, just for demo purposes. That's all we've got so far, and ultimately I've set up the top control and the bottom control. These are just NURBS circles. Put them in place, freeze transformation so that they're zeroed out at that particular place. At the moment, no connection at all. You'll find that I can maneuver them wherever. There's no connection. It's not connected to the joint chain. So we'll look at setting up an IK spline. We'll probably do it over a few videos, split it into different sections. So let's have a look at the initial setup. So just to make things easy, I'll go into wireframe mode. At this stage, when you've got lots of joints and geometry and constraints, you might find that you're navigating through your outliner quite a lot. I navigate through the outliner extensively, so it's always useful to know easy selection, that kind of thing. Okay, so firstly, with setting up IK, make sure you're in the animation submenu. That just brings through the skeleton tools where we can load the IK spline handle tool. Okay, so let's bring up the spline tool. Reset tool, as people have been experiencing recently, sometimes you have accidentally clicked on something which sends Maya a bit wacky and you just don't know why it's doing certain things. So it's always a good idea to reset the tool back to its default and then build or choose the settings you want. In this instance, we want the default settings. When we click on the joints to build the IK spline, it will automatically create a curve for us. So that's the auto create curve, and it simplifies the curve as well. So that's sort of everything that we need. So literally, as with any IK, whoops, wrong control, you select the base first and then select the end joint there. And you can see straight away in wireframe that you've got the IK handle there, and you've got the line that connects them. If I try to move the IK handle, I can't even press W to move, so nothing happens. That's a little bit defunct for this setup. Okay, I guess it's just the result of setting up IK. It will give you the IK handle in the outliner, so let's call it spine underscore IKH, and we also have the curve as well. It's the curve that we'll be tapping into and controlling, because ultimately it's the curve that will now affect the joint chain. So we've obviously got shapes turned on as well, so let's just in display turn shapes off. Okay, so that's not necessary at this stage, and let's call this spine underscore CRV for curve. Okay, so that's the setup so far. What we need to do now is look at how to control the curve. And I find the easiest thing to do to set up to control the curve is to actually skin the curve to two joints, which you can actually do. And this is useful to know in Maya as well. You can actually skin curves. And so literally I'm going to create two joints, one at the top, one at the bottom, and skin the curve to these control joints. So let's go skeleton joint tool. Useful to just click anywhere on the grid, press return. Let's change the radius to 3, make it a little bit bigger, and then move it into position. So create your joint and then move it into position. And let's call this top underscore, let's call it top control underscore JNT, so we sort of know that it's separate to the skinning. Duplicate it and snap it to the bottom with V, so you've got the top and the bottom. So let's call this base control underscore JNT. Okay, so we will now skin the curve to the two control joints. Select the two control joints, select the curve in the outliner, and go to skin, bind, skin, smooth bind. Selected joints is good, closest distance is fine, and generally you can keep everything as it is, and bind skin. So now that the curve is skinned, we should be able to move. I'll just take it into the shading mode. When we move these control joints, they actually move the IK spline as well. Okay, so again we move this and it moves the IK spline from the base. So you can already see the flexibility of this control as well. Okay, in rigging, it's bad form to have joints as selection handles. It's much better to have NURBS curves. So let's set it up so that the NURBS curves are controlling the joints, and that's really easy. It's a case of parenting. So we want the top control joint to be parented to the top control, so I'm middle dragging in the outliner, and we want the base control joint to be parented under, I've called it the hips control. Okay, so literally I can now select the controls and move the IK spline. So we're getting somewhere that resembles part of the behaviour that we want with the IK spline setup.